it was like opening a fire hydrant. I couldn't get enough. I couldn't get enough. And it would ebb and flow. When I got out of college, my college drinking didn't get out of me. So I just kept that routine, even though I was a young professional. And that's when it had to go kind of dark, when I had to start hiding it.
Sober is my superpower. Not the words you think you're going to hear coming from a recovering alcoholic. Because one of the things I've learned in my work with those battling addiction is that the toughest critic tends to be themselves. Because recovery never ends, right? And sobriety, with whatever the addiction may be, is part of you. What makes it your superpower is that it doesn't define you. But that takes work, and that takes time, and that definitely takes healing. But you know that there is always humor in the healing. I talk about that a lot on the podcast, that these are inspiring stories of traumas to triumphs through health, healing, and humor. And that is exactly how I stumbled upon Daniel Patterson, my guest this week on Holistically Speaking. Daniel hasn't touched a drink in over 8 years. And during that time, this former teacher has devoted his life to being better for himself, for others. And during that time, he's written a book. He founded a $1 million company. He launched a podcast. And what that all means is that there's always possibilities for change with the right support, with the right tools, and with what he calls a SoberTunity. You know what my favorite thing is, Daniel? Do you know what my favorite thing is?
What is it?
It's kind of like scouring TikTok and finding cool people like you.
Well, thank you. That's better than the alternative, which is scroll and troll, which a lot of people love to do.
I can't say I don't do that too. I mean, I came to the TikTok game a little late. I wasn't one of those like, the pandemic's happening, I got nothing to do, so let me just create a TikTok. I actually joined TikTok about a year ago after a pretty big name was like, you need to be on TikTok. And I was like, all right. And I joined it. But now I find it to be a fabulous place to find people like you, amazing people who are sharing your message. And I'm just really happy to have you here.
Yeah, I love TikTok. There's someone for everyone. And I did not start TikTok during the pandemic because I had 3 kids, like elementary school kids at home. So I was just trying to stay sober and keep them alive.
Yeah.
And then I started TikTok. I joined TikTok about 2 years ago, maybe. Yeah.
Yeah. Well, you're on TikTok, but you're pretty much on every social platform because, as we know, we repurpose everything in this day and age. Some people are TikTokers, some people are Instagrammers, some people are Facebookers.
Yeah, I'm on the gram and
on
Facebook.
The gram. Yeah. But what really pulled me into what you do with SoberTunity, which I love that play on words. I'm like, that makes me so giddy. But just talking about your own recovery, and look, recovery is not easy. I have some clients that are in recovery, have dealt with their own addictions. And, you know, my whole thing is that you have to find the humor in the healing. You have to find ways to have an outlet that says this is part of my journey. And really what pulled me in is that you bring such comedy and humor, not making light of what you've been through, but you bring this element of like, you know, dad jokes, kind of funny guy. And you're just making light of life, which, right?
Yeah, I mean, I just have to keep it cringy enough to keep my kids from watching it, right? But like funny enough to keep my target demographic to watch it. And I definitely have used humor as a coping skill. Yeah. Paired with many other coping skills, including lots of therapy, medication, meditation, exercise, boundaries, and sobriety.
Well, what's a day in the life like for Daniel now that you're in a constant state of sobriety? Because it is a never-ending process, right? They don't say you're recovering anything. You really are always working on you.
Yeah, it's a never-ending journey. It's a process. It's not linear. I always think about recovery as the 5 stages of grief. That's a lens through which that has helped me view it. So when I'm feeling a certain way, I can say, oh, is this denial? Is this anger? Is this bargaining? Is this depression? Or is this acceptance? And based on that sort of pause, then I understand what to do. But when I first quit drinking, I was a little bit of a hermit. I isolated. My ego was too big for community. I didn't want to tell anybody. And in fact, I'm 8.5 years sober nearly. And I didn't start talking about recovery until on TikTok, like when I started talking about it on TikTok. And I didn't even start talking about it on TikTok when I started TikTok. So this is all pretty new to me. Yeah.
8.5 years sober.
Yeah.
Every day is a new day, right?
Yeah. Yeah.
And
you gotta sit in the shit and feel your feelings sometimes.
Yeah.
And then there's others days that, like today, where I wake up and it's just a euphoric feeling where I'm so grateful and humbled to be able to do the work that I do and be this version of me. Not that it's perfect. I mean, I have a lot of flaws still, but it's far better than drunk Daniel.
Yeah. So can we talk? Let's talk about drunk Daniel, if that's okay. I'm curious.
Oh, yeah.
I'm curious about your journey. I know this has been a long process for you. I mean, obviously, the process includes the 8.5 years, but there's
Right.
so much work that happened before. What is Daniel's story?
Oh man. Daniel is your typical hot mess express adolescent, dysregulated, lack of therapy, by no one's fault, lived in a very rural community, grew up, I'm 43, so in the 70s and 79, I was born in 79. So 80s and 90s, therapy isn't what it is today. And certainly I don't know, I was a victim of my own dysregulation. And so I didn't do myself any benefits. I did well until about middle school, and I started failing out of school. So my parents moved me schools, and I went to high school and severely bullied. But I still put on a brave face. I got 4.0, varsity tennis, varsity football, student council, lead in the school plays. Like I was just determined and defiant to heal, or I thought that was healing, right? I thought doing was healing. I was mistaking busy for successful. And when I got to college, I really started drinking, and I went to having no friends to having a lot of friends. And I, quite frankly, had no idea what to do with a friendship. I went into every situation assuming someone didn't like me. I was defensively posturing. So alcohol was like this key that unlocked the side of me that could welcome friendships. And it was like opening a fire hydrant. I couldn't get enough. I couldn't get enough. And it would ebb and flow. But when I got out of college, my college drinking didn't get out of me. So I just kept that routine, even though I was a young professional. And that's when it had to go kind of dark, when I had to start hiding it.
And for you, even post college, I mean, what was the profession what were you doing?
So I taught seventh grade English for 10 years. And then so I worked at a 7 through 12 public school, high performing. I was there 12.5 years as an English teacher for 7th and 10th grade. I was a student council advisor. I coached varsity tennis, and then I became the assistant principal.
Whew.
And I actually got sober while I was the assistant principal. And I call it landing the plane. There was about a 4-year period where I knew I really wanted to quit and I wanted to stop, and before I actually landed the plane. Yeah.
To think that you're one of many in the education system that probably is battling something or has been through addiction.
Yeah.
And as someone, I mean, I'm a college professor, and I saw it a lot just in the college environment, that your teachers, your professors, they look like your educators, your faculty members look like they have everything together during those hours.
Right.
But there are so many that are struggling with their own demons and their own upsets. And, we all have stuff. We all have shit. We all have stuff we're dealing with. But, was there a feeling of guilt or anything like that for you while
100%.
You're an educator?
Yeah. Hypocrisy, guilt,
Yeah.
I never felt, have said this before, and I'll double down, that I think that teaching kept me alive because the joy and optimism and just like the relationships with the students was so refreshing. So I loved going to work. I did not dread going to work. I loved what I did. I loved my time. And it was like two different people. It was like high performer, check all the boxes, teacher of the year twice, like all of these awards and all of the bullshit, pardon my language. But then I would get home, and that's where all of the trauma I hadn't dealt with, or anxiety I hadn't dealt with, or just, that sense of entitlement. Like, I do all of these good things, so I deserve to drink. Like, whatever the excuse was, you could Velcro one on me. I was just, lathered in tar, rolling around in feathers of excuses, just like, oh, this is the reason today, and this is the reason today. But certainly when I got into the role of the assistant principal, which if you are an assistant principal, no one comes to see you because they're happy. You are like, it's like the land of broken toys. Like they come to you.
The misfits.
Yeah, because they're in trouble, because they're mad about something, and here I am doling out consequences. Like, you really can't be drinking at the school dance. Thinking to myself, but I drank a fifth of vodka last night, so the hypocrisy of it, definitely. But I never drank at work, and I don't feel like I let it interfere with my work. Although I do know in my soul, I 100% would have been a better teacher.
Yeah. Do you miss that kind of teaching? Because I know you're still educating.
I'm still educating. I don't know if I miss working in a brick and mortar school, because after I left public education, and I guess that's an important part to talk about. A part of my recovery is that part of the reason I left is that I was a year and a half sober. I got sober on New Year's Day. I was hallucinating at breakfast at Norm's Diner. Great hash browns, horrible hallucinations. And I went up to my car.
I'm not sure that's a good marketing, but it's your story.
That's my story.
So you went out to your car.
So I went out to my car. I was having auditory hallucinations, visual hallucinations, and I went to the doctor, and I haven't had a drink since. So,
wow.
And that's a short version, but fast forward a year and a half, and my best friend, who I had worked with for 11 years, died by suicide. And I continued to work for 6 months, trying to just fake it till you make it,
Yeah.
And I couldn't. So I took a mental health leave from public education, and I never went back.
So much of our healing, and so much of us covering up our sadness and our traumas can lead to us going to really unhealthy distractions, addiction being one of them. And like in the work that I do, it's helping people find the pleasant distractions, the positive distractions that can change the landscape of the brain. But without those tools, it's very difficult, first of all, to heal on your own. Nobody's healing you, but to have the support and the guidance that you definitely need when you're going through a major shift in your life, like sobriety, right? So for that, when that happened, 8.5 years ago, when you took that last drink, at the time were you married? Yeah.
Still married to the same. My wife and I have been married almost 18 years.
Amazing.
Yeah, but we had only one child. We have 3. So my oldest was 3 at the time. So she's the only one that knew me to drink.
Yeah. And how has it been for you as a father, as a husband, to be this kind of partner, this kind of parent, compared to where you were before?
I mean, I don't think there's any arguing with the fact that it's a completely different version, although my ego will still root and be like, we weren't so bad, we had a lot of redeeming qualities. We still had good times, I still showed up and paid the bills and did things, but certainly rebuilding trust with my wife took time. There's only so many times you can apologize.
Yeah.
And I remember one time apologizing and saying, I'm sorry. And she said, don't be sorry, be better,
Nice.
And she was very good at holding me accountable. She went to therapy on her own to learn how to deal with an addict without enabling me, and we still talk about things that happened. And we still unpack shit,
But that's life, unpacking shit, right?
But that is life, yeah. And certainly there was a discomfort, I think, not only with my wife, and I'm not speaking for her, and I'm not saying that she doesn't want me to do what I'm doing, but even with my family, when I started sharing my story, it's really vulnerable, right? And you're opening it, and you open yourself up to a lot of criticism and compliments and opportunities, but also hate, and just everyone knows your business. So,
and the other part of that, and we're seeing more people do that in this world, owning your story, taking to stage, the red dot, the TED Talk, the keynotes. I mean, I feel like everyone, and this is great because we all have a story, has something that they want to share that someone's going to be touched, moved, and inspired by it in some way. So yay that we're getting out there doing that for those who want to be public about their story. That's one way to heal. So through you sharing your story, and not being the kind of educator you were, brick and mortar educator, you're still educating because you came, you had this Recover EDU, which was your book that came out. Perfect timing.
Yeah. Well, and I think what's interesting, another note I would like to add, just if we're talking about like timeline of career, when I left education in 2016, my therapist was Jessica St. Clair saved my life. She's my therapist. She was my therapist for a long time, even in an active addiction. And she was with me through the suicide, and we did some EMDR and we did some trauma healing, and she was like, Daniel, it's the job. It's your sobriety. Like, you need to get out. So I left and I had no plan. I did not have any. I had only ever been a teacher, since I was 22 and to 35 when I got sober, and 36, I guess, is when I left my job. So I took a year off education. I started a company, Patterson Perspective, which is still alive and well. But people are like, what do you do? And I'm like, I don't know. I just try to help people. Part of that helping, though, and the universe works in mysterious ways, I connected with a private company, and I ended up developing a therapeutic school for 7 through 12. That's 50% therapy, 50% education, fully accredited, full day school. And I just recently left that role in November after opening their last campus.
Isn't it amazing how life is falling into? Because that was going to be my next question. Like, you leave the education system, you're just getting sober. I don't have a job and I have a family and I have to take care of people, because I know in the masculine energy, the man technically, or those who identify as the masculine energy, and I'm not talking about your gender, wants to protect, take care of, be the container for. And here you are, husband, father, no job, and working on sobriety. And how do I provide?
Yeah. I think more than, it was so important for my journey to experience that, because I had always hidden behind my first line of defense, always, even as a kid, and then even through adulthood, was always, my agency always went to my career or to my grades or to whatever, my resume, right? So having no job and no leadership role and nothing, and just being me, sitting in the soup, trying to figure out what was up and what was down, was really important, and it was really hard. And quite frankly, I feel like it was a miracle that I stayed sober through that.
Right. When things are really activated, the stress of not having the job. And so you created this program. That's just phenomenal. And to know that that gift was presented to you, and it's a mutual gift, right?
Yeah.
You were giving something to them. They were giving something to you. How did that come about?
A mutual friend. And also, I left very publicly. And so people knew that I was available, and I was, in my recovery. So I had a year and a half, almost 2 years in working, right? School years of sobriety. So I was really passionate about student corrective experiences and restorative justice and giving kids another chance and different ways to, not have a school to prison pipeline, essentially. So it was just known. And then I live in Orange County, but the company was up in Los Angeles. And so I went for it. And it was never a full-time job. It was something I could do part-time while I also built my company. And it was beautiful. And there's a woman named Amanda who owns the company, and we had lunch, and then I met with Fiona, who's the CEO, and they're just beautiful people, and they have an amazing program, and I'm still friends with them, still talk to them, still refer clients to them. It's just one of a kind.
I love that.
Or two of a kind.
We need more mental health and emotional and social and emotional learning tools in school. I say it all the time. I mean, in part of the work I do, it's about giving kids the SELs so they can self-regulate. Because good Lord, as another kid from the 70s, what were we told when we were kids? If we were in trouble or if we did something that was out of line, go think about what you did. Go to your room. Go to detention, go to the vice principal's office. It was all about punishment and think what you did. And like the last thing you're doing is thinking what you did. You're pissed off at everybody else because we don't have the brain capacity where we're like, oh, I can see I'm coming from my inner child. It's not, you don't have that, but you need to be able to change the landscape of the brain and being able to have these tools to sit back and be like, I can control my thoughts and my actions. And come from a place of kindness, and teaching kids this is so important so that they become well-adjusted adults,
Absolutely. And even for them to come to the understanding that I cannot control my thoughts right now. Like I am dysregulated. I am having these intrusive thoughts that I need help with. And restorative justice, or I call it corrective experiences, because restorative justice has become very politicized. So I just changed the name, Same thing. But I travel around the country and I work with different states and school districts and counties and even corporations to put in mental health and substance use disorder programs. And when I talk about corrective experiences, generationally, without fail, there's always the group of people that believe in consequences no matter what. They want the accountability, but they're not providing the support. And I'm all about accountability, but it's where the apex where accountability meets support. So if you're going to hold somebody accountable, you better be supporting them and helping them do better.
Yes. And they need to be willing. I just had this conversation too. A lot of times I'll have people come to me like, oh, my boyfriend is this way, or my husband's this way, or my wife's this way. Can you help them? I'm like, you know what? That's a beautiful gift that you want to give them, but they need to want the help, because you can't exhaust I'll work till the day is long helping people. But if they are not open to being mirrored back what they don't see in themselves in the moment and not ready to do the work, then that's such a waste of their time, because they're not present. And children the same way, you get a lot of the rolling of the eyes. You have to engage them and make them feel like, oh, there's something that's changing here,
But even in the work I do with adults in exploring sobriety, so many of them don't even know where to start, right? So you're just like, what kind of help do you need? And they're like, I have no idea. And now take that down to the adolescent brain that's even less developed, right? And in a different age and stage. So it's about creating almost like this healing buffet, like here's your healing buffet. Here are these options. You can take this traditional punishment, or you can take this corrective experience, which includes a little bit of deep dive, some thinking, some tools, some uncomfortable conversations. Which one would you like to have? And rare is a child who just wants the consequence, because their actions are asking for help and they have no idea how to get the help that they need.
That's why we see the outbursts, but it happens with adults too, right?
Oh yeah.
We just are more in tune to, that child's reacting because they don't have the emotional tools or the fully developed brain yet to know what the outlet is, right? Which is
and not to be confused with the green light to do whatever you want, wreak havoc and be violent and all of these things. It's just, so accountability can look like support. It doesn't have to look like an old 80s movie.
John Hughes film.
Yeah.
Everything's a John Hughes film.
It doesn't have to be a John Hughes film. And it's usually like, the Chip Whitleys who just, they don't get it. They don't get it.
Okay, we are totally from the same generation. Thank God for TikTok and the Gen Xers too, by the way. I am loving my Gen X families on TikTok because I'm like, thank God we're talking about this stuff because we didn't have these tools back then. I don't even know where I would be. If there was social media, Daniel, I love asking this one. If there was social media back when we were in our teens, where do you think you'd be today?
Oh, God.
I'm thinking for me, prison.
I don't know. I actually don't think I would have made it.
Yeah.
I don't think I would have made it. I would like to say that because there's someone for everyone and social media is often planted as the big bad wolf, especially by parents. And I'm not undermining social media, but I'm just saying whenever I have a conversation with teachers or adults about student mental health, the first thing they say is, it's the social media. Mm-hmm. And part of that is absolving their own responsibility in the fact that they could have an impact on that child's social emotional wellness, right? So often social media is a lifeline for kids that have no one else that looks like them or thinks like them or identifies as they identify. Think about it. You're in a small rural town and you're non-binary and you don't have anybody to identify with. Social media can be that lifeline that keeps you going, that affirms your relevancy and affirms your self-love and keeps you on this earth long enough to find your people.
So true. It's really the only reason why I continue to post every day. I can share my family stuff on private portals, and I have that, but I think with what I do, I make my personal life more public with how I'm doing stuff so that it's not separating. Like, it's not all just professional, not coming from like the therapist point. Like, this is my daily life. This is how I integrate it into my work and play so that I can be a well-adjusted adult. Here are some tips for you to do it too.
Right.
Right?
Yeah.
Yeah.
And I think another TikToker and Instagrammer who I love, who's a psychologist who does that, is Dr. Kristen Casey.
I know who Kristen, yeah.
Yeah, and she does such a good job like threading the needle between vulnerability and approachability, and in turn, she can drop a clinical bomb on you and you'll listen.
Right. Because she's coming from a place of authority and credibility, but not psychobabble.
Yeah, she's not just like psych-splaining.
Right, psych-splaining. Right. Nobody wants to be explained to. We want to be given the gift of education, but not being taught constantly. I mean, obviously there's a learning tool there. And you want to do it in a fun and engaging way, which I think you do that. And you are an educator. And even if you're not teaching in the brick and mortar anymore, you come with years of experience, both personally and professionally. And I definitely want to talk about that, but I want to take a moment just to let Holistically Speaking listeners know that Daniel Patterson is graciously offering the SoberTunity Think Tank membership that he has available. You can check that on his website. I will have all of that in the podcast notes. We're talking about sobriety. We're talking about the road to sobriety. And we're also talking about the SoberTunity that anyone can have. And the other thing I want to add is, we started this thing called speakpipe.com/holistically speaking, where you can share your voice, because in my mind, it's not just listeners on this show. It is you being a part of it. So
that's fantastic.
Yeah. Go to speakpipe.com/holistically speaking. Again, that'll be in the notes. And tell your story. If you have a sober story of your own, if you have a journey, let your voice be known. I'll share it on the podcast.
I would love to hear it.
I would love to hear it too. And I definitely want to make that part of things. So make your voice heard, because we all have something,
Yeah, shelve the shame. I think there's power. There's wisdom in the wound. All of that.
Yeah, and even if we share it after this episode, because you'll hear this episode, you'll hear this little tidbit about being able to go to SpeakPipe. I'll do a special episode just to empower, just to hand the tools of self-empowerment over, because I don't empower anyone. I don't heal anyone, nor do you, nor does anyone. We only have that power over ourselves. But if you're looking to boost that self-empowerment and stand behind your word and your message and your voice and your sobriety, I will make an episode just about that for you folks.
That is incredible.
Yeah.
That would be like a montage of healing.
Yeah, like just a bunch of different voices. I am
yes.
Daniel, and I've been
Yes,
sober
I love
X
it.
amount of years, whatever you want to do. We'll think about it. I'm always thinking about stuff while I'm doing my shows and having these
Yeah.
conversations, but this is
Well,
how...
I think you landed on a good idea.
This is a think tank, man. This is how we work
That's right.
here. And I do want to touch a little bit on the suicide.
It's only recently that I've started talking about that.
Well, thank you.
Yeah, it's really interesting that I was just in Pennsylvania last week, and I was giving a bunch of speeches. I was working in a county, and I think it was the high school speech. And I was speaking to an auditorium filled with high schoolers, and I refer to my speaking style as traumady, because I unpack a lot of my trauma through comedy and share vulnerable situations about myself. And I was specifically there to speak on as a reaction to student death by suicide, right? By mental health, I think is actually the correct vernacular now. But I said it out loud that I survived a suicide attempt as a teenager. And when I said it, I just took a beat and I was like, wow, I've never said that on stage before. And I just kept moving. Well, the news was there. The news was there. So they put it in the newspaper and they put it on the news. And good for them. And because, again, I had been sitting on that for so long, and I particularly get worried for my mom when she listens to my stuff, and I'm not wanting to upset her. Or, and also I don't really want to go back and unpack that again with people. But yeah, I survived a suicide attempt as a teen, and I am one giant receipt that you can continue to heal. Because after that attempt, was I better? No, I went into a full addiction. It wasn't until I got the clinical care that I needed that I could really quit the drinking. And let me ask you a question, Hilary. What do, if somebody asks you what to do if you catch on fire, what do you say?
If someone asks me, say that again?
This is what I did when I was in the assembly. I asked the kids, okay, if you're going to catch on fire, what do you do? And they all yelled the same answer. It's like a little slogan.
Oh, did they stop, drop, and roll thing?
Stop, drop, and roll.
Right.
Right. That's the kind of messaging, that's the kind of slogan, that's the kind of branding that I'm trying to bring to adolescent mental health. What do you do when you feel this way? All of the kids knew. All of the kids, 2023. What do you do if you catch on fire? We stop, drop, and roll. Whole auditorium. What do you do if you feel like you want to harm yourself? Crickets.
Silence.
So
you're bringing the whole idea of a fire,
what do you do?
How do we make that a statement that kids know without even thinking twice about it? That's brilliant.
Yeah, and a lot of time, the suicide ideation, when it becomes active, right? Like I'm going to do this. Think about like a house fire. You only have a few minutes to get out of the house. You only have a few minutes to call the authorities. The structure might burn down, but you're going to get out alive, right? But you have to make those quick decisions, and we have to come up with some branding or a way that is the same for everyone, that's just known. And I think 988 is a good start to that. Yet no one knew about it.
Yeah. I'm with you on that. I've got something that I'm working on that I'm hoping will be part of that. And I know you're doing it too. We've got to be warriors to this,
Yeah.
And make them actionable steps and an actionable saying that comes to mind without even thinking twice about it.
Correct. I mean, you think about just say no,
right?
And the dare thing. I remember during the pandemic, when people were saying that they needed to put people, whoever came up with the marketing for cutting all of the 6-pack.
Oh, right.
Plastic.
So they don't, right.
Yeah, so they don't hurt
the environment, right?
Yeah, like put those people in charge of wearing masks or whatever. Like, there's all these things that we socially get really committed to and that are just ingrained generationally that you remember.
Yeah.
Stop, drop, and roll. Just
say no.
Make sure that you snip. Like everyone in their 40s, if you give them like one of those 6-pack plastic things, will immediately
we instantly cut it with scissors because we're like, no, it'll kill the fish and the ducks.
Yeah, and it's true. But that's the kind of generational shift that I'm trying to at least be a part of.
Yeah. Well, I want to be a part of that with you. I continue to be a part of that with you. I love what you're doing. I think that's amazing. And thank you for being so vulnerable and opening up about your own experience and what you went through. Because, Daniel, you might not realize this, and I know you're in an auditorium filled with kids, and you're like, what did I just say? And not to put words in your mouth of how you felt, but I can imagine that there was a kid, and probably more than one, that was sitting there that has either attempted, has thought about it, and you probably changed the trajectory of things going forward. And then that news outlet being there, somebody saw it, and you made a difference, and you touched, moved, and inspired somebody not to take that step.
Yeah, and I think do it scared, right?
Yeah.
Take healthy risks, and I've grown into that. I'm 43. It's not something that I started talking about right away. My message has evolved as I've evolved, and I think I didn't want to talk about it for a long time because I didn't want to be sad fishing or trying to optically feel like Michael Scott in The Office trying to relate to everybody, just like it just didn't until it felt organic. It never came out of my mouth. And then once I spoke it, because I don't write speeches.
Mm-hmm.
I don't.
Oh, me neither.
I don't write speeches. I have a bullet point of stories that I'm going to tell. And every story has it's like a parable, but it's some sort of shit show story from my life. And then it lands with a message and a call to action.
I think it's more organic that way.
Yeah, it just happened. So it wasn't, there was nowhere to put it in or not put it in. It just sort of flowed. And I'm hopeful that it did change someone's life. And I did get lots of DMs from high school kids on Instagram thanking me and saying that it did, which is overwhelming and humbling and rewarding all at the same time.
I will say that about you is you come across like this funny kind of, there's something about you that just pulls you in and you're like, is this guy for real? And then there's a humble side to you that's very present, the more you watch. And I like that side. And for the moment right after you said that in that open room, what was your first feeling after releasing that information?
I would say probably relief.
Yeah, that's what I was
relief,
thinking.
Yeah. And it's interesting because the posture, often the most common scenario of me with a friend, if I'm friends with them now, is that when they first met me, they felt like I was aloof or I wasn't emotionally available or I was kind of a dick or whatever because I am really quiet and I'm really shy. And when I go on TikTok, for example, or I get on a stage or go on a TV show or whatever, I can access a part of me that I don't have in my day-to-day life. That doesn't mean that it's not real. It just means that I'm not going to make every single video really dramatic if I'm having a dramatic day because that's a lot, people coming to me for inspiration and I'm having a shitty day. Sometimes I'll talk about it and sometimes I'll just dance, I'm just going to take these chuggy dad moves to the TikTok and just make people feel better.
Yeah, your kitchen dances are some of my favorites.
Thank you. I love my kitchen dances.
The kitchen gets a lot of use.
It does. It's like this.
Good sliding floors.
It's this floors and the kids' toys aren't everywhere. So
got it. So thank you. I really just want to thank you for being so open and honest and really vulnerable about what you're sharing. And I know you're touching hearts. I know you're making a change, and I know you're just getting warmed up. And I'm so glad that I was able to hold space for you on the show. I really am. Thank you so much for saying yes, first of all. Thank
you for having me. I appreciate it.
It really really touches my heart that you're out there doing this, because there need to be more wellness warriors, more mental health warriors out there. And I gravitate to that. It's the kind of alignment and energy I gravitate to. And I'm like, oh, maybe there's a point where we'll be in the same room under the same roof doing it together. You know, I always have that feeling like I want that, because that just builds even more momentum. So keep doing what you're doing. I want to give you the space real quick though, before I have one other thing to share with you.
Okay.
Is there, you know, with the Recover EDU, is that something that's still is that still very present in your life, or has it grown to something new?
It's grown. No, I mean, I've evolved. So I still work very much in education. I travel quite frequently to do trainings and speak on that matter, right? Yeah. But TikTok has been this wild, crazy accident, because when I started posting about sober content on TikTok, I had no desire or concept that it would ever grow into what it's grown into today, including my own podcast, which is called Sobriety Uncensored.
Yes, thank you for sharing that.
And just having a lot of loyal followers, and then creating a think tank. I call it a think tank because it's a can-do, not a how-to. So it's sort of like a private membership site. Very low cost, but also completely free if you need financial assistance.
Very nice.
You just have to be, the only quality that would bar you from getting a complete scholarship is entitlement. You know, acting like I don't know.
Good place to start.
About 30% of the members are totally scholarshiped, and that's the intention, is to make a really approachable space for people to land and talk about their experience maybe for the first time, and then help deal them out like cards to resources. And why don't you try this, and why don't you try that, and what works for you and what works for me. And it's just a safe place.
What's involved in the think tank while we're talking about it? Because I'll put a link to that in the notes, but just can you give kind of like a brief?
I send a daily email that's not canned or pre-written. So I write it every day, and I write it based on, we have a private Discord server for our community. So it's in different channels based on what you're interested in. And we Zoom 3 times a week for an hour.
Wow, that's a commitment.
Yeah. And it's $37 a month. And you get all of that.
That's amazing. And that shows that you're really showing up too. You know,
and it's capped at only 250 members total. So it's not I'm not trying to grow. I want depth. I want depth. I want approachability from a financial perspective. It's not what I do full time for a living. I want people who want to have community, make change together, stick together. So it's capped. And 250 is a great number because I'm an educator and I feel like I can handle that. I can show up and be present and not have it feel like, oh, you're never around, you know?
Yeah. Well, that's a great, $37 a month to put towards, it's not going to be a replacement of everything else, to add to your emotional well-being and your mental health and your physical health with someone who's been through it, with others who are going through it, because community is so important.
It is. It's the secret sauce.
Yeah. And I'm working on rebuilding something similar. And I love the fact that people want to be a part of something, because I know I love community. I do better in community when I need support. We can't do it alone.
And there's something nice about a virtual community, because we have people from all over the world and all over the country, and it is just who's who in the zoo. It couldn't be any more different. And I think that's what I just love about it the most, is that it attracts so many different kinds of people.
How do you deal with that if it is global? Like, what time do you do it in the day?
So if I do it in at least one Zoom a week is early in the morning on the West Coast, because then that's evening in Europe.
Okay, so you're at least
that's how we do it.
You're able to come to at least one.
Yeah, so there's 3 meetings a week at least, and then I add some bonus Jonas meetings. I call them bonus Jonas, like Frankie Jonas. Shout out Frankie. But Friday or Saturday, for example, I added a sober parenting meeting in the morning.
Yeah.
So parents will come to that. And then we have I travel for business meetings. So kind of ad hoc. But the running baseline is 12 meetings a month. Every Sunday morning, every Wednesday night, and Friday happy hour.
Love it. Sober happy hour.
Yeah, but I mean, it gives you something to do when all of your coworkers are off to have their apple martini with Crystal from accounting, and you're just like, well, I want to, but I can't, so I'm going to go do this Zoom instead.
I think that's fabulous. I love that. Everything you're doing that's just so great to know that there's some kind of support out there. And I imagine there will be people on Holistically Speaking that will gravitate to that. So we'll put that all in the notes. All right, Mr. Patterson, I have a little game for you.
Oh God.
Love to do this. I'm gonna.
Okay.
This is basically me. This is where I have to put on my old lady glasses.
Your readers.
My readers. That's what happens in your 40s. I am going to throw out a word at you. This is like a word association game. As a former teacher, you know what that is. And come back with the first word that comes to mind without too much thought.
Oh, Lord.
Like, right?
Yeah.
Beat the clock. No pressure. All right, here we go. Bully.
The Crew.
Trauma.
Brian.
Anxiety.
Daniel.
Suicide.
Patrick.
Sobriety.
Opportunity.
Drunk.
Shame.
This is 2 words, but social media.
Push and pull.
Children.
Hope.
Teacher.
Crisis.
Recovery.
Is possible.
SoberTunity.
Just getting started.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I love it. That's good. You were good at that. You get an A+. Thank you for sharing that. So I want to ask you if you have any final words you'd like to share with those who tune in to this show.
Well, first of all, I want to thank you for, letting me be here and giving me an opportunity to connect with you and with your listeners.
Of course.
There's always tomorrow is the message. And make your mess your message. Yes. So figuring out a way to take the pain that you have and manipulate it into fuel that then can feed your purpose.
Yeah.
I've had a lot of adversity, and there's a lot of reasons why I could get away with using or just, living a life that was maybe less than. And I'm not talking about financially or career-wise. I'm just saying it from a healing human perspective. There's always an opportunity to grow, and you can't fake it till you make it. You have to face it till you make it. And therapy or any sort of healing modality is like dating. Yeah. So get out there, see what the resources are, try it out, check your ego at the door, and just keep going until you break through that glass ceiling, because you will.
Fabulous. Love it. It is a relationship. You mentioned it's like dating. The first and most important relationship is to ourselves.
Right.
So that's a great way of putting it. Thank you, Daniel. This was great.
Thank you.
You're a joy and a pleasure. Hey, one final thing I want to ask you. There's all this TikTok talk about like getting rid of TikTok. What are your thoughts of that?
I mean, I don't focus on what I can't control.
There you go.
Yeah.
Right?
I have enough anxiety as it is.
You'll find a platform. Here's my thought. When people are going off the wall about it, I'm like, people will find you. If you build it, they'll come. If it's not TikTok, it's something else. Right?
Yeah, that's what I'm saying.
Yeah,
and if it goes away for everyone, it's a fair shake.
We will find something else, right?
That's right.
And you have. I follow you everywhere. All right. So thank you so much. Appreciate it.
You.
Can't wait to share you, and just keep doing your thing.
All right. Bless up.
Before I share how you can connect with Daniel, before we go any further, I want you to know that if you are struggling and you need help, there is always 988. This is the national hotline with people there to support you 24 hours a day, 365 days a year. Write that number down. It could help you. It could help someone that you love. Now, if you need the kind of support that Daniel is providing, if that resonates with you, consider joining his SoberTunity think tank. Having a community and someone like Daniel leading the way could be what you need, could be what someone needs. I added a link in the listen notes for you to get in touch with him and find out a little bit more. Of course, as a trauma-informed practitioner, do not hesitate to reach out to me. Having tools to change your thoughts, your moods, your behaviors, your habits based on neuroscience is where it needs to start. It is an essential part of your healing process, your growth process. And you know what? Just being here, just listening to this conversation with me and Daniel is a step in the right direction. You can book your complimentary session with me, and we will hug it out and begin the process with self-healing, understanding, and gratitude. Hug it out today. It lies within you. That link is also in the podcast notes. And since Daniel and I talked about it during our conversation, if you have a story of your own that you would like to share, if you want to share your journey to sobriety on Holistically Speaking, I am not kidding. I will create that episode for you. All I'm asking you to do is go to speakpipe.com/holistically speaking, share your name, where you're from, and how long you've been sober. Share your story. Your voice and your story matters. You can also choose to do this anonymously too. Just make sure you give yourself the gift, press record, and let us celebrate the small wins one day at a time. Holistically Speaking is edited by 2 Market Media with music by Lipone Redding. And I'm going to leave you with this. Trust your journey. Trust your journey, my friend. We are all works in progress. And every moment of awareness is a step in the right direction towards living happy and living well. I love you. I believe in you. And I will see you next week. Be well.